Married to a quiet human, she was shocked when he unsheathed his sword. Growing up on the planet Zathar, a world of sparkling cities and advanced technology, she had heard countless stories about Earth's inhabitants, how they were simple, peaceful, and most surprisingly underestimated. When she first met Kale at a diplomatic conference on the neutral station of Orion 7, she had thought he was just another quiet human, polite but unremarkable. Kale had smiled softly at her introduction, his brown eyes calm and steady. Unlike the other diplomats who spoke rapidly and gestured wildly, he had simply nodded and said, "It's nice to meet you." That had been it. No attempt to impress, no grand stories of his achievements, just a quiet, ordinary human. Alara had been intrigued. Something about his quietness drew her in. There was a steadiness in him, a calmness that contrasted sharply with the noisy, ambitious beings she usually dealt with. And so, over the months, their friendship grew. They shared long walks in the observation gardens of Orion 7, talking about small things, the weather on Earth, the taste of human food, the stars visible from Kale's hometown. It was not the kind of relationship that began with fireworks or excitement. It was gentle, like the soft hum of a starship engine, always present, always comforting. And in that comfort, Alara found herself falling for him. Their wedding had been simple. In the human tradition, they exchanged rings, promising loyalty and love. For Alara, it was almost too quiet. There were no extravagant celebrations, no flashy displays of wealth or power. Just Kale, standing there in his plain suit, looking at her with those calm, steady eyes. And in that quiet, she felt more warmth than she had ever felt in a hall full of alien grandeur. Life together began in a small apartment in the heart of the city. Alara had expected excitement. She had imagined a husband with stories, with adventures, with the kind of energy that could match her own. But Kale was quiet, almost too quiet. He worked at a human technology company that repaired and built machines, coming home every evening with a tired but calm expression. He spoke little of his work, often choosing to sit in silence while Alara recounted the day's events. At first she had wondered if she had made a mistake. Here she was, an alien diplomat married to a human who seemed ordinary in every way. There were no surprises, no extraordinary feats. He did not show off. He did not boast. He simply existed, and yet somehow that existence was comforting. But soon she noticed small things, strange things. One evening, Alara had returned from a meeting with the Galactic Council, her mind buzzing with decisions and negotiations. She entered their apartment to find Kale in the living room, kneeling on the floor, his hands carefully arranging a series of tiny metallic objects. "What are you doing?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. Kale looked up, his expression calm. "Just organizing some tools," he said softly. Alara frowned. The tools were unlike anything she had seen. They shimmered faintly, as if resonating with an energy she could almost feel. She had studied many alien technologies, but these seemed different. "They look dangerous," she said cautiously. Kale shook his head. "No, not dangerous. Useful." He smiled faintly, and that was all. He did not explain further. Alara had let it go. Perhaps it was a human hobby, like collecting old relics or building models. But the feeling in her chest, the sense that Kale was more than he appeared, lingered. Days passed, and the small hints continued. She noticed his reflexes were unusually sharp. A falling cup, a loose panel in the apartment, a flickering light. Kale reacted instantly, faster than she had thought possible. And then there were the dreams she sometimes had, vivid and strange, where Kale moved like a shadow, unseen but powerful, confronting threats she could not fully understand. Alara tried to dismiss these thoughts. Humans were known to exaggerate their abilities in stories, but in reality they were ordinary beings. And Kale seemed so ordinary. He read quietly in the evenings, played soft music, and occasionally smiled at her in that calm, steady way. But the quietness, she realized, did not mean weakness. One evening, she returned from a late council meeting to find the apartment unusually dark. The lights flickered, and a faint hum filled the air. She called out for Kale, but there was no answer. Her heart beat faster as she stepped carefully into the living room. And there he was. Kale was standing in the middle of the room, holding a long, slender object wrapped in cloth. When he saw her, he smiled softly, like nothing was wrong. "I was just preparing this," he said, gently placing the cloth back over the object. Alara's curiosity overwhelmed caution. She stepped closer. "Kale, what is it?" He hesitated for a moment, then said simply, "A sword." Alara blinked. A sword. She had expected tools, gadgets, maybe even a human invention, but a sword. She studied it carefully as he finally unwrapped it. The blade was sleek, made of a material she could not immediately recognize. It glimmered faintly, reflecting the dim light of the apartment. Strange symbols ran along its edge, intricate and precise. She had seen many alien weapons, but none like this. Why do you have this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Kale's gaze met hers, calm and steady. "It's for protection," he said simply. Alara laughed nervously. "Protection? From what? We live in a safe city. You don't even go to dangerous places." Kale's expression did not change. "Danger doesn't always announce itself." She shook her head, both amazed and confused. Her husband, the quiet human, holding a sword with such care and certainty. She realized there was more to him than she had ever imagined. And though she did not yet understand it, a small thrill ran through her, a mixture of fear, awe, and admiration. Over the following days, Alara watched Kale more closely. She noticed how he moved around the apartment, precise and deliberate, how he handled the smallest objects with care and attention, how his quiet demeanor hid an inner strength, a confidence that came not from showing off, but from knowing something she could not yet see. It was unsettling in the most exciting way. She had married a human thinking she knew him, but now she realized that Kale was a mystery. And sometimes the greatest mysteries were the most fascinating. One evening, as the two of them sat on the balcony watching the city lights, Alara turned to him. "Kale," she said softly, "there's something you're not telling me." He looked at her, eyes calm, unreadable. "Perhaps, but some things are not yet ready to be shared." Alara sighed, leaning back. She did not fully understand him, but she was beginning to see that humans, quiet, unassuming humans, were capable of more than she had ever imagined. And perhaps in the coming days she would see just how extraordinary her husband truly was. The stars above the city twinkled, distant and cold, but within her heart, a spark of curiosity and anticipation burned bright. For in the quiet of her home, she realized, the calmest waters often hid the strongest currents. And Kale, her quiet human, was a river yet to be fully discovered. The morning began like any other in the city of Orentera, a bustling hub where humans and aliens lived side by side, exchanging goods, ideas, and knowledge. Alara and Kale's apartment was quiet, filled with soft light from the rising twin suns. Alara sipped her morning tea, her thoughts still lingering on the sword Kale had revealed the night before. She had tried not to dwell on it, telling herself that humans could have hobbies, and perhaps Kale's sword was just that, a relic, a simple tool for training or meditation. Kale entered the kitchen silently, carrying a small tray with 2 steaming cups of tea. He set them down carefully, his movements precise. "Good morning," he said softly. His voice was calm, steady, a soothing presence in the room. Alara smiled, though her mind remained restless. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" he nodded, taking his own cup. "Yes, and you?" "I did," she replied, though the truth was that sleep had been interrupted by dreams of shadows moving with Kale's sword. She shook her head. Humans were simple, ordinary. She needed to remind herself of that. Their morning continued peacefully, Kale leaving shortly after breakfast for work, and Alara heading to a council meeting where she would discuss trade negotiations with representatives from several outer planets. The streets of Orentera were alive with activity, hovercars zooming past, merchants calling out in dozens of alien languages, and the city's enormous towers reflecting the bright light of the suns. Alara moved quickly through the crowd, her diplomatic robes flowing behind her. She was focused, confident, and experienced. She had handled crises, negotiations, and conflicts before, yet there was a faint unease in her chest, a feeling she could not place. By mid-morning, she arrived at the council hall, a vast building made of shimmering crystal-like material. Representatives from multiple species were already gathered, their voices blending into a chorus of different languages. Alara took her seat, noting the usual mix of impatience, curiosity, and mild tension that always preceded council discussions. Just as the meeting began, a sudden disturbance rippled through the hall. Alara noticed it first as a faint vibration in the floor, almost like a warning tremor. Then, a shadow moved quickly across the entrance. Within moments, the doors burst open and armed mercenaries poured in. Their weapons glowed with energy, advanced technology she had seen only in war simulations. Panic spread instantly. Aliens shouted in fear, scrambling to find cover behind pillars and benches. The council guards raised their weapons, but it was clear that the mercenaries were well-trained and coordinated. Alara froze, her mind racing. Why attack here? The council hall was supposed to be one of the most secure places in the city. And yet the mercenaries moved with precision as if they had studied the layout for months. Then she saw it, a small movement at the edge of the chaos, barely noticeable, yet impossible to ignore. Kale. He had arrived, slipping quietly through the side entrance. In his hand, he carried something she had only seen once before, the sword. Alara's heart skipped a beat. Her quiet, ordinary husband had entered the hall during an attack, armed with a weapon she did not understand. The first mercenary raised his weapon, aiming directly at her. Instinctively, she ducked behind a table. The blast of energy tore through the floor where she had been standing moments before. Her heart pounded as she realized just how deadly these attackers were. Kale moved calmly, almost gracefully, stepping into the open. He raised the sword, its surface gleaming faintly in the bright hall lights. The first attack came, and in a blur, Kale shifted, the blade intercepting the energy blast. Sparks flew, and the weapon hummed with an energy that seemed alive. Alara could not believe her eyes. Her husband, the quiet human she had thought harmless, was moving with precision, speed, and confidence far beyond anything she had imagined. He was not just defending himself. He was protecting her and the council members. The mercenaries regrouped, forming a coordinated assault. Yet every attack met the same result. Kale dodged, parried, and countered with flawless skill. Each strike of his sword cut through shields, each movement deliberate and controlled. Alara watched, amazed and terrified, as the quiet human displayed a mastery that seemed almost superhuman. Her mind raced with questions. Who had trained him like this? How had he kept this a secret? And most importantly, how many others underestimated humans as she once had? One of the mercenaries lunged directly at her, their weapons swinging toward her head. Kale reacted instantly, spinning, the sword striking the attacker's arm and sending him crashing into a pillar. Alara's breath caught in her throat. He moved like a shadow, unseen but everywhere at once, his calm face betraying none of the intensity of the battle. When another mercenary fired a burst of energy toward a group of diplomats, Kale leapt forward, the blade slicing through the air. The energy dispersed harmlessly, striking the floor with a hiss. Alara realized that Kale was not just fast, he was calculating, predicting every movement of the attackers before they made it. The fight seemed to last forever, yet in reality, it had only been minutes. Slowly, the mercenaries began to retreat. Kale did not pursue them. Instead, he sheathed his sword, stepping back into the calm after the storm. He looked around at the frightened council members, ensuring no one was harmed further. His eyes finally met Alara's, calm and steady, almost apologetic in their quiet reassurance. Alara rushed to him, her emotions a mixture of awe, relief, and disbelief. "Kale, how did you do that?" she asked, her voice trembling. He smiled faintly as if the answer were simple. "I am trained," he said softly, "to protect, to defend, and to act when needed." Alara shook her head, unable to comprehend fully. All this time she had thought her husband was ordinary. But he had just shown her the extraordinary. Humans, she realized, were capable of far more than anyone gave them credit for. The council members began to recover from their shock, whispering among themselves, their faces filled with awe and confusion. Alara could sense a shift in the air. The quiet human, the one everyone overlooked, had just changed their perception of what was possible. Later, back at their apartment, Alara could not stop thinking about the day's events. The city was safe again, and yet, the memory of Kale's skill stayed with her. She watched him quietly arrange his sword once more, his movements deliberate, calm, and almost meditative. "Kale," she said softly, breaking the silence, "you've been keeping this from me all this time." "Why?" He looked at her, eyes calm, steady. "Because it was not yet necessary," he replied simply. "You did not need to know. Now the world has changed. You see that humans, though quiet, can hold strength beyond imagination. But there is more. I am more than you know." Alara's curiosity ignited. She realized that the quietness she had once thought was ordinary was actually a mask, hiding depth, skill, and courage. And she felt both admiration and excitement. Her life, she now understood, was no longer predictable. That night, as the twin suns set and the city lights reflected across the windows, Alara sat beside Kale. The hum of the apartment, usually calming, now carried a thrill of anticipation. She knew that this was only the beginning. The quiet human she had married was not ordinary. He was extraordinary. And the galaxy, she realized, had no idea what humans were truly capable of. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter that night, as if acknowledging the hidden power of an underestimated species. And Alara, holding Kale's hand, felt a spark of pride and wonder. Her husband, her quiet human, had just proven that appearances could be deceiving, and that even the calmest waters could hide the strongest currents. The city of Orentera had quieted after the attack. The streets, once chaotic with sirens and alarms, now returned to their usual hum of activity. Yet for Alara, nothing felt ordinary anymore. The memory of Kale wielding his sword with unmatched precision and strength lingered in her mind like a vivid vision she could not shake. She watched him that morning as he moved around their apartment, arranging small objects on the shelf with deliberate care. His movements were calm, almost meditative, yet each gesture carried the weight of discipline and experience. The sword rested nearby, gleaming softly in the sunlight that filtered through their window. Alara could not stop staring at it. She wanted answers, but something in Kale's steady gaze told her he would reveal them only in his own time. Finally, unable to contain her curiosity, she asked, "Kale, I need to understand. How did you fight yesterday? How could you move like that?" Kale turned to her, his expression calm. "You saw only what was necessary," he said softly. "There are things you do not yet need to know." Alara's heart raced. She had always believed in transparency in her work. Diplomacy required trust and understanding. But now she realized Kale's quietness was not deception, it was caution. He was patient, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. "Kale," she said firmly, "I am your partner. If there are threats, if there is danger, I need to know. I need to understand." He nodded slowly, as if he had expected this moment. "Very well," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Then I will tell you as much as you are ready to hear." Alara sank into the chair, her eyes fixed on him. Kale took a deep breath. "I am not an ordinary human," he began. "I am part of an ancient order, humans trained in secrecy to protect the galaxy. We are called the Guardians." Alara blinked. Guardians, she repeated, struggling to comprehend. You mean humans are warriors, Kale nodded. Yes, but we do not seek glory. We train in secret, watching over civilizations, preventing conflicts before they can escalate. Our duty is protection, not recognition. That is why you never saw this side of me. Alara's mind raced. She had known humans were underestimated, but she had never imagined such a history. An entire secret order, hidden from the galaxy, operating quietly while civilizations grew and changed. And her husband, her quiet, gentle Kale, was one of them. Why marry me? She asked softly, a question that had been gnawing at her since their wedding. If your life is so secret, why bring me into it? Kale's eyes softened. Because you are someone I trust, he said simply. And because there are times when my duties intersect with the wider galaxy, times when someone like you, someone with understanding and wisdom, can make a difference. I did not expect to reveal this to you so soon, but the attack yesterday changed that. Alara leaned back, absorbing the weight of his words. Her husband's quietness was not emptiness. It was focus, discipline, and restraint. The sword he had wielded was not just a weapon. It was a symbol of centuries of training and responsibility. Before she could ask more, the comm system buzzed. Alara's heart skipped a beat. On the screen was a holographic image of the Galactic Council's emergency liaison. Ambassador Alara, the voice said urgently, we have intercepted signals indicating another mercenary movement near the Central Trade District. They are armed and organized. Your presence and your husband, S, may be necessary. Kale's calm expression did not falter. I will go, he said simply, picking up the sword. The blade gleamed as he unsheathed it, humming softly with energy. Alara felt a shiver of awe. There was no hesitation, no fear. Her quiet human moved with the certainty of someone who had faced countless battles. I am coming with you, she said firmly. He shook his head gently. No, this is my duty. You would be a target if you went. Stay here, stay safe. Alara's mind argued, but she knew he was right. She watched as he moved through the apartment, silent and purposeful, his presence commanding yet unassuming. He exited into the streets of Orentera, and within moments, the city seemed to hold its breath, sensing the calm before the storm. At the Central Trade District, chaos had begun to spread. Merchants were running, goods scattered across the streets, and the mercenaries were striking quickly, targeting energy banks and transport vehicles. Kale arrived without announcement, stepping into the fray with a presence that seemed to slow the attackers' movements. The first strike came, a blast of energy aimed at a transporter carrying valuable supplies. Kale reacted instantly, the sword intercepting the energy and dispersing it harmlessly into the air. The hum of the blade filled the space, a sound that seemed alive with its own power. Alara, observing from a safe distance via her portable monitor, could barely comprehend what she was seeing. Every movement Kale made was precise, calculated, and devastatingly effective. He did not move in panic or anger. He moved with the efficiency of someone trained for decades, every action deliberate, every strike purposeful. A group of mercenaries advanced, weapons raised. Kale shifted, his footwork light and controlled. In a single motion, he disarmed one attacker, sending the weapon spinning across the street. Another tried to flank him, but the Guardian anticipated it, the blade moving in a swift arc, deflecting an energy strike and knocking the attacker off balance. Alara felt a thrill of fear and admiration. Her husband was no longer the quiet human she had known. He was a force, a protector who could confront danger without hesitation. And yet, he moved with restraint. No unnecessary strikes, no rage-filled attacks. Every action served a purpose, to stop the threat, to protect lives, to maintain order. The mercenaries realized they were facing more than an ordinary human. Their attacks became cautious, tentative, as Kale's skill became clear. He moved like a shadow, striking with speed and precision, and then disappearing from one position to appear in another. The energy of the sword left streaks of light in the air, each strike disarming or disabling rather than harming unnecessarily. One attacker aimed a high-powered weapon at a group of children trapped near a market stall. Kale reacted instantly, leaping forward with unbelievable speed, deflecting the blast, and creating a protective barrier with the sword's energy field. The children's screams turned into gasps of awe as they watched the quiet human protect them without hesitation. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, the mercenaries retreated. They had underestimated him, and the efficiency of his movements had convinced them to withdraw rather than face certain defeat. Kale sheathed the sword, his expression calm, as if he had only taken a short walk rather than fought an entire battle. The crowd around him slowly began to realize the truth. Humans, quiet and underestimated, could hold power beyond imagination. Whispers spread through the streets. "Did you see that? The human, he saved everyone. I thought humans were weak. I was wrong." Alara rushed to the scene, her heart pounding. She reached Kale as he stood amidst the debris, calm and composed. "Kale, you were incredible," she said, unable to hide her awe. I didn't know humans could be like this." He looked at her with those steady eyes, a small smile forming. "Humans are more than they appear," he said softly. "We adapt, we protect, we endure, that is our strength." Alara felt a rush of pride. Her husband, the quiet human she had married, had revealed a side of humanity that few had ever seen. And she realized that the galaxy, so often dismissive of humans, had underestimated them at its own peril. That night, back at their apartment, Alara could not sleep. She watched Kale carefully place his sword on its stand, its blade reflecting the soft glow of the city lights. She knew that yesterday had changed everything. Humans were no longer simply underestimated, they were a force, a hidden current beneath the surface of the galaxy, capable of extraordinary feats. Alara reached for his hand. "Kale, I want to understand more. I want to know everything. Your past, your training, your world." He squeezed her hand gently. "In time," he said softly. "But know this, the galaxy will test us, and the quietest humans often carry the greatest strength. You will see soon enough what we are capable of." Alara nodded, a sense of wonder filling her heart. Her life with Kale was no longer ordinary. It was extraordinary, full of hidden strengths, unseen dangers, and the promise of discovery. And she knew one thing for certain: the quiet human she had married would continue to astonish her in ways she had never imagined. The stars above Orentera seemed to shine with renewed brilliance, as if acknowledging the hidden power of humanity. And Alara, sitting beside Kale, understood that their journey had only just begun. The apartment was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of Orentera's twin suns setting behind the distant towers. Alara sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly, her mind still reeling from the events of the past days. Kale moved around the room with calm precision, placing small objects in order on a shelf, as if each motion required careful thought. "Kale," she said softly, breaking the silence, "you've been keeping so much from me. I need to understand. Tell me your story. Tell me who you really are." Kale paused and looked at her, his brown eyes calm but filled with depth. He gestured for her to sit beside him. "Very well," he said, his voice steady. "It is time you know, but understand this. My past is not simple. It is long, and it is not just mine. It belongs to my order, the Guardians, and to the humans who trained me before me." Alara nodded, leaning in. "I am ready." Kale took a deep breath and began. "The Guardians are an ancient human order. Our origins go back hundreds of years, long before humans traveled beyond their home planet. Our ancestors were trained to protect civilizations from hidden threats, to observe, to act when danger appeared. Most humans never knew of our existence. We operate in secrecy, hidden from governments, hidden from other species. Our work is quiet but essential. We prevent wars, stop criminals, and protect those who cannot defend themselves. And we do it without recognition. Alara listened, fascinated. She had always thought of humans as underestimated, but she had never imagined such a hidden history. Kale's calm demeanor suddenly made sense. His quietness was not a flaw, it was the product of discipline and centuries of secret training. My training began when I was very young, Kale continued. Humans in the Guardians are selected carefully. Not everyone can become a Guardian. We are trained physically, mentally, and spiritually. We learn to move without being seen, to strike without hesitation, and to predict threats before they occur. The sword is part of our tradition. Each Guardian carries one, crafted from materials that enhance human skill and reflexes. It is both weapon and tool, and though it appears simple, it is far more powerful than most beings can imagine. Alara stared at the sword resting in its stand, its blade reflecting the soft light. She had seen its power in action, but now she understood the depth behind it. It was not just a weapon, it was a symbol of centuries of human dedication, training, and vigilance. "You kept all of this from me," she said softly, "and yet yesterday you revealed a part of it. Why now? Why not sooner?" Kale's expression was gentle. "Because it was not yet necessary. Humans are patient. We act when the time is right. I did not reveal my abilities because there was no threat close to us. But yesterday, the attack at the council hall forced my hand. I had no choice but to act. And now, you know a small part of what humans can do when the situation demands it." Alara's mind wandered back to the chaos of the council hall, to the mercenaries who had underestimated him, and to the calm strength with which he had protected everyone. She realized something important. Kale's quietness was not weakness, it was a deliberate choice, a part of who he was as a guardian. "Tell me more," she urged. "How did humans become capable of this? How did your order survive all these years in secrecy?" Kale leaned back, his eyes distant as if recalling long-forgotten memories. "Our survival has depended on patience and discretion. Humans are adaptable. We hide in plain sight, observing, learning, and preparing. When civilizations grow, we grow with them, always watching, always ready. We train rigorously, mastering weapons, strategy, and diplomacy. But the key is restraint. A guardian never acts for glory or pride. We act for the greater good. That is why we remain hidden. Recognition is not our goal, protection is." Alara absorbed every word, her admiration growing with each revelation. She had married a man she thought she knew, but now she realized she had only glimpsed the surface. His quietness was a mask of simplicity, hiding a depth of skill, history, and responsibility. "And your family?" she asked gently. "Were they guardians too?" Kale nodded. "My parents were trained in the order. I grew up learning their ways, understanding discipline, and following their teachings. But it was never easy. The life of a guardian is filled with sacrifices. Friendships are limited. Emotions must be controlled. Love is rare because attachments can be weaknesses. Yet I chose to marry you, because I trust you, and because you understand the importance of balance between duty and life. That is why I revealed part of my secret to you." Alara felt a mixture of pride and awe. Her husband's calm, gentle demeanor had concealed centuries of human training and discipline. He was a guardian, a protector, and yet he was also the man she loved. She reached out, holding his hand. "Kale, I am proud of you, and I want to stand with you in any way I can. Teach me, guide me, help me understand your world." Kale's eyes softened. "In time," he said. "But the galaxy will test us soon. There are forces that do not wish to see humans rise, that fear what we can accomplish when united. The mercenaries yesterday were only the beginning. They were scouting, probing for weaknesses. There are greater threats coming and we must be prepared." Alara nodded, determination filling her chest. She had always been a diplomat, skilled in negotiations and alliances, but she now realized that diplomacy alone would not be enough. She needed to understand Kale's abilities, his training, and the ways of the Guardians if she wanted to face what lay ahead. The next days passed in preparation. Kale trained in secret, moving through the apartment with swift, precise motions that left Alara in awe. She observed, learning to anticipate his movements, understanding the discipline behind each strike, each step. It was not just strength. His skill came from years of focused practice, patience, and understanding. At night, they spoke of the Guardians' history. Kale shared stories of human protectors who had prevented wars on distant planets, of Guardians who had saved entire colonies from hidden threats. Each story amazed Alara, opening her eyes to the quiet resilience of humanity. Humans, she realized, were capable of patience, endurance, and strength far beyond what any other species expected. One evening, as they trained together in the open courtyard of their apartment complex, Kale paused, placing his sword carefully on the ground. He turned to her, his expression serious. "Alara, you must understand, being a guardian is not just about fighting. It is about responsibility, restraint, and judgment. Every action has consequences. Every decision affects more than just ourselves. That is the burden we carry." Alara nodded solemnly. She could feel the weight of his words. "I understand," she said softly, "and I want to help. Whatever comes, I will stand with you." Kale's expression softened, a small smile forming. "Then you are ready," he said. "Not everyone can comprehend this path. Many fear what they do not know, but you see the strength within, and that is rare." Their bond deepened over the following weeks. Alara learned not just the history of the Guardians, but also the philosophy behind their actions. The quiet strength of humans, the patience, the endurance, and the discipline, it was all connected. Kale's calm demeanor, his careful movements, and his gentle presence were the result of this legacy, a living example of humanity's hidden potential. Yet even as they grew closer, the threats beyond the city loomed. Alara could sense it. The galaxy was not at peace. Mercenaries, hidden factions, and ancient enemies of the Guardians were moving, watching, and planning. And she knew that the coming challenges would test both her and Kale in ways they had never imagined. That night, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon and the city lights began to glow, Alara sat beside Kale on the balcony. The sword rested nearby, a reminder of the strength and history it represented. She felt a sense of awe and anticipation. Their life together was no longer ordinary. It was filled with purpose, responsibility, and the promise of extraordinary challenges. Kale's voice broke the silence. "Tomorrow, we begin preparations for what lies ahead. The galaxy does not wait for anyone, but together we will face it. You and I, humans and allies. The quiet strength of our kind is only beginning to be seen." Alara took a deep breath, feeling both fear and excitement. She had married a man she thought she knew. Now she realized she had married a force, a guardian, a protector of the galaxy, and she was ready to stand by him, to face whatever threats came their way. The stars above Orentera sparkled like diamonds, a silent witness to the hidden strength of humanity. And Alara, holding Kale's hand, understood that the quiet human she had married was capable of far more than the galaxy had ever imagined. The journey ahead would not be easy. But together they would rise, and the galaxy would learn that even the quietest humans could change the course of history. The city of Orentera had never felt so tense. Alara stood at the edge of their apartment balcony, looking out over the sprawling metropolis. The lights flickered in the twilight, and distant sirens warned of unrest spreading across the central districts. She could feel the quiet hum of the city, the anticipation of something bigger approaching. And in her chest, a mixture of fear and determination pulsed, because she knew Kale, her quiet human, would be at the center of it all. Kale moved silently behind her, his sword sheathed at his side. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he scanned the horizon with calm, steady eyes. "The forces moving against us are not ordinary," he said finally. They are organized, intelligent, and dangerous. The mercenaries yesterday were only scouts. The real threat is approaching, and it will test everything we have learned." Alara nodded. She had trained alongside him for weeks, learning the movements, the philosophy, and the discipline of a guardian. She was ready, not just as his partner, but as someone capable of understanding the quiet strength humans possessed. "Then we face it together," she said, her voice firm. Kale smiled faintly. "Together," he agreed. The first sign of the approaching threat came that night. Sensors across the city detected a fleet of ships emerging from a hidden warp corridor near the outer rim. These were not standard trade or patrol ships. They were sleek, dark, and armed with powerful energy cannons. Alara watched as the holographic map of the city displayed their positions. Panic rippled through the council channels. Kale, however, remained calm. He turned to her. "We will need allies," he said. "The Guardians work in secrecy, but some threats require coordination." "We cannot do this alone," Alara nodded, understanding immediately. "Then we call on the allies I have worked with, diplomats, traders, even friendly mercenaries, all who trust humans and their hidden strength. We must unite them." By morning, Alara had sent out communications to multiple factions across Orintera. Responses arrived quickly, some eager to help, others cautious, but all willing to support the quiet humans they had begun to respect after Kale's display at the council hall. Together they formed a coalition, humans, aliens, and hybrids, ready to defend the city. Kale trained and prepared, moving with quiet precision. He inspected the weapons of the coalition forces, offering advice on tactics and positioning. Though his movements were calm, every gesture radiated confidence and authority. Alara observed him closely, realizing once again that the quietness she had once underestimated was actually a form of strength. As the fleet approached, the city prepared for defense. Energy shields were activated, patrol drones took positions along the streets, and coalition forces organized themselves in strategic points. Alara worked tirelessly, coordinating communication and ensuring that every ally understood their role. When the enemy fleet arrived, their ships descended rapidly, targeting key points in the city. Explosions erupted across the skyline, and energy beams lit up the night. The citizens of Orintera ran for cover, while coalition forces engaged the attackers with coordinated strikes. Kale moved among them, his sword glowing faintly as he deflected energy blasts aimed at innocent bystanders. Every strike was precise, every movement calculated. Alara felt a mixture of awe and pride. Her husband was no longer simply a quiet human. He was the embodiment of guardian skill, protecting lives with calm efficiency and unmatched mastery. The enemy fleet unleashed a powerful energy wave, designed to disable the city's shields. Kale reacted instantly, leaping into the path of the wave and using the sword to create a protective barrier. The energy struck the blade and dispersed harmlessly, leaving Kale standing unharmed. The coalition forces looked on in astonishment, realizing that humans were far more capable than they had ever believed. Alara joined him on the field, coordinating the allies and offering support. Her calm, authoritative presence combined with Kale's unmatched skill to inspire the coalition. Together, they moved as one, a force that balanced strategy, diplomacy, and strength. The enemy realized their advantage was gone. Their attacks became scattered, uncoordinated. Kale advanced, striking with precision and disarming attackers without unnecessary harm. He moved like a shadow through the battlefield, unseen until he struck, his sword slicing through enemy defenses with ease. Alara directed the coalition forces, using her knowledge of the city and diplomacy to anticipate enemy movements. She guided human and alien forces to cover strategic points, creating a network of protection that left the enemy vulnerable. Her presence bolstered the morale of the coalition, proving that humans were not just fighters. They were leaders and tacticians as well. The battle reached its peak when the enemy commander, a towering alien with advanced weaponry, emerged from the flagship. He moved with deadly speed, firing energy blasts and summoning reinforcements. Kale stepped forward, sword in hand, meeting the commander head-on. The clash was intense. Energy beams struck the ground, shaking buildings, as Kale and the commander moved with incredible speed and precision. Each strike Kale delivered was calculated to neutralize, not to kill, reflecting the Guardians' philosophy of protection rather than destruction. Alara coordinated the allies, ensuring that civilians were safe and that the enemy could not regroup. She watched Kale as he fought, heart pounding with pride and fear. He was quiet, calm, and deadly, but always in control. She realized fully now that humans, even quiet humans, were capable of unimaginable strength when driven by purpose and discipline. The final moment came when Kale, using a combination of skill, strategy, and the sword's energy, disarmed the enemy commander and forced him to surrender. The remaining ships of the fleet, seeing their leader defeated, retreated into the warp corridor, leaving the city intact. The streets were silent but filled with awe. Coalition forces cheered, citizens came out of hiding, and Alara felt a wave of relief wash over her. She turned to Kale, who stood with the sword sheathed, calm and composed as if the battle had been nothing more than a training exercise. You saved the city," Alara whispered, still catching her breath. "I never imagined humans could be like this." Kale smiled faintly. "Humans are more than they seem," he said simply. "We endure, we protect, and we act when the time is right. That is our strength." Alara's eyes filled with admiration. "And you are the proof of that strength. My quiet human, you are extraordinary." Kale reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "And you are my partner, my ally. Together, we can face anything the galaxy throws at us. The strength of humans is hidden, but it is real, and now the galaxy will begin to see it." The next days were filled with recognition and respect. Humans were no longer underestimated. Their quiet strength, patience, and discipline were acknowledged by allies and former skeptics alike. Alara worked alongside Kale to build alliances, combining diplomacy with the hidden power of the Guardians. Together, they prepared for the challenges ahead, knowing that the galaxy would test them again. But now, they were not alone. Humans, quiet yet strong, stood ready to defend, protect, and lead when necessary. And Kale, the quiet human she had married, had become a symbol of that hidden strength, inspiring others to see beyond appearances. That night, Alara and Kale stood on the balcony once more, looking out at the city they had saved. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, reflecting the hidden potential of humanity and the courage of those willing to rise when others faltered. "Kale," Alara said softly, "this is just the beginning, isn't it?" He nodded, his calm eyes reflecting determination. "Yes, but together we will face it. Humans are underestimated, but now the galaxy will remember. Quiet strength can change everything." Alara leaned into him, feeling the quiet power radiating from her husband. She knew that life with Kale would never be ordinary. It would be filled with challenges, adventure, and the ongoing discovery of humanity's hidden potential. And as the twin suns of Orin Terra set behind the distant towers, Alara understood fully that the quiet human she had married was not just a protector. He was a force that could reshape the galaxy, and together, they were unstoppable. The stars above watched silently as the city slept, and a new chapter for humanity began, one of hidden strength, courage, and the promise that even the quietest beings could rise to greatness.